welcome everybody. It's good to see that we've got some on already, and hopefully we'll get more during the day. But before we do begin, there's a couple of notices I'd like to do regarding housekeeping. Firstly, please remember to complete and return your evaluation form to help the union in planning future events. And also on that form, anything that you want the union to be doing for you. I will repeat this again later, but at the moment we are in talks with the government, the new government, and part of that I've asked the General Secretary to put supply teachers at the forefront of that as well, the forefront, to see if we can get a better deal. If we're looking at a better deal for teachers, it should be for all teachers, including supply teachers. So if there's anything that you would love the General Secretary asking the government, put that on the form. You can also put it in the chat box, and then I will write them down as well. Rather than asking questions about things, just save a bit of time, put things in the chat box. But if there's a specific question you want to ask later, that's fine as well. In addition, when you do ask questions, please keep them to a question so we can answer them quickly, so more people can answer questions rather than a long statement, then a question. That would be very helpful too. Right, at the start of all these, we do have a code of conduct, so I am going to read that carefully. The NASUWT is committed to ensuring that all members, representatives, staff, visitors, contractors, and other third parties behave in a courteous manner at all times when engaged in work for on behalf of the union. Aggressive, offensive, intimidatory, disrespectful, or other unacceptable behaviour will not be tolerated, and that includes comments as well in the chat. Please just be respectful, be nice to each other. If you've got any experience, if you're start again. For anyone experiencing any technical issues, just please email conference.events@mail.nasuwt.org.uk. That probably will go up in the chat somewhere, and they'll be able to assist you, the team. You will see a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, which will enable you to ask a question during sessions. I will be keeping an eye on that. Use the chat box of the platform for anything that you want to make a comment on. They'll all be taken, they've all been recorded and taken note of, so we'll not miss anything. And we aim to have about a five-minute break between each workshop. So even though the timing, say this goes on till 10:15, we aim to finish probably 10:10 to give you a little bit of a cover break before the next one does start at 10:15. You can attend all the sessions. We've got 7 sessions for you today, 4 workshops and 3 little sessions at the start, including what we've got now. So you just come in and go as you please. Whatever workshops that are highlighted for you, as in specific for you, or you want to take interest in. And so now we're actually going to start the supply forum. So I'm going to hand over to Paul first. He's going to tell you where we are, what we've been doing since the last conference. Away you go, Paul.
Good morning, Wayne, as chair, and good morning, colleagues. Hope you're all safe and well. Just to reiterate what Wayne has said, if there are questions, we will commit to taking those away. If we can't answer them today, I'm hoping I've factored in certainly enough time for there to be questions, to take questions and to answer them, but we will commit to taking any away that we don't answer, coming back to colleagues and emailing them with any answer accordingly. Those of you who have been to numerous events like this before, whether they're virtual or physical, we do have a forum. It's a chance for us to communicate to you, supply teacher members, what we've been doing on your behalf, but also it forms the opportunity, a very important opportunity for you to give us your views, thoughts, and to put us on the spot in terms of asking us questions. So there is a bit of a presentation. Apologies for that. I know it can sometimes appear like it's death by PowerPoint. So there is a bit of a presentation. As I said to Wayne before, I don't see this taking that long. So hopefully I've factored in enough time for questions at the end. So I will just start sharing my screen. And obviously, if people can tell me they can see that, I don't think that's a problem. Always a problem when the bars for the bars for Zoom meetings hover over the things that you need. Right, there we go. Right, so I'll start the slide show from the beginning. Is everybody okay? Can everybody see that? Wayne, is that okay? Just give me a thumbs up. Brilliant, brilliant, because I know I can't see other people. Okay, so this is the opportunity for the union to just update you with where we are and what we've been doing. And I know, and I want to say a big thank you to you as colleagues, supply teacher members, for completing and taking the time to complete the 2024 surveys, whether you're in England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and by the way, apologies, Wales. They have now been concluded, and obviously we are in the process of analysing that information, and the reports will follow in due course. It's likely that the next time we meet in March, we'll be giving you the feedback, maybe detailed or otherwise, on the results of those. And one of the things we've been doing over a number of years now is tracking that and tracking that trend. And I think Wayne alluded to, and it's really important to understand your voice and the importance of your voice in terms of where we are going to go with the new government, because these surveys are fundamental to the work we do in terms of what your experiences are of pay, what your experiences are on your treatment, what your experiences are in general in terms of terms and conditions. So these are really, really important things as we look to engage with the government in terms of its make work pay or its new deal for working people agenda. So it is committed to that, and the information we can present to them from these surveys, particularly if you wanted to focus the lens on England and Wales, where we know we've got this murky situation of agencies and or umbrella companies operating as well, then obviously the more ammunition we can provide, the more data we can provide, the more useful it helps us with the arguments we have and the conversations hopefully we'll have, as Wayne alluded to, with this new government moving forward. So a big thank you to all of those colleagues who completed those. And we did actually have an increase in the response rates for those surveys from previous years. So that is really, really helpful. So once again, thank you for doing that. Obviously, I always say this, but this is a constantly ongoing process. Every time one of these things concludes, then obviously the next one begins. So we are in the process now with the new government of looking at the letter which is issued by the School Teachers Review Body or the Independent Welsh Pay Review Body in Wales regarding the pay award and terms and conditions for teachers working in England and Wales for 2024/2025. So the remit letter will have been received by the union, and we're now in the process of again collating, submitting evidence. And as you'll be aware, and we will continue to do so, we continue to make the case for the inclusion of supply teachers, irrespective of how they're employed, and for the government to take a serious look at the position regarding supply teachers in England and Wales. So that's an ongoing process. When one concludes, the other one begins. So we're now in that process, and obviously the union will make sure that your views and opinions, and this is fun, this goes back to the point about the surveys. Obviously the surveys inform the evidence we submit to the government regarding the situation for you as supply teachers. So that will be an ongoing process, and you will be able to, at some stage in the future, find all this information on the relevant pay section of the website, because we publish the evidence that we submit along with the other evidence from others accordingly. Okay, so something we have been doing whilst we met last time, or since we met last time rather, is we have been looking at some work we can do in terms of agitating in some areas. You know, the General Secretary has been very clear. You know, if supply teachers are a group that feel like, you know, they are, and I know this is the word or language some of you may use, second-class citizens, we don't get, you know, enough attention maybe, then obviously we've been looking at what we can do to agitate in this area. One of the things we did do, and some of you may have received an email some of you may have responded to this, is we have been looking at some work around holiday pay. The law changed from April of this year, April the 6th. The law changed. So holiday pay went back to the previous way it was calculated. And obviously, we wanted to look at whether some members were not having their holiday pay calculated accordingly. So we have contacted, reviewed, and we have submitted claims on behalf of some members. And that's an ongoing legal process, and we'll see where we go. But it's just an important example of the fact the union isn't ignoring our supply teacher members. We are conscious that we are looking at areas where we can operate, agitate, do something on your behalf, and we will see where this goes. And hopefully we may be in a position to report back a bit later on following the conclusion of those processes. Obviously, and again, we've talked about this before, but it's an ongoing process. We are represented on a range of different TUC bodies. Some of those have a clear lens on areas that would be relevant to supply teachers. So we are represented on the TUC's procurement and outsourcing working group, which looks at how public bodies like local authorities, schools should secure outsourced workers like supply teachers, and factoring into that some elements around good terms and conditions and good levels of pay. So we are working and we're making sure that your voice is heard on those forums. We are also represented in the TUC's one-sided flexibility and insecure working group. So obviously now we've got a Labour Party in power as a party of government. We're looking to make sure what are their manifesto commitments, how do they impact on supply teachers, and how can we make sure the voice of you as supply teachers is heard. And so we are making sure that your voice is heard. And I know Matt Cray from the TUC is coming later, and he will be coming to do a brief update. Now, obviously, it is a brief update because some of the stuff we've talked about previously is still ongoing, and it will remain ongoing. But obviously now Labour in government, we have to hold their heat to the fire and push them on their commitments and see how we can make the legislation work for all workers in the United Kingdom, including obviously US supply teachers. We always hold and continue to hold. So apologies, this is a little bit of repetition, but it is an ongoing thing again. KIT meetings. So we have KIT meetings with colleagues in Employment Agency Standards Inspectorate and people in the Recruitment and Employment Confederation who represent a number of different supply agencies. So we do share intelligence with them. We do meet. I met with somebody from the EAS only in the summer. We talk about issues. We've been very keen to discuss with them issues, for example, around allegations and what happens when allegations are made. We've also engaged DfE officials in those conversations as appropriate. And we've got a workshop today that I'll be doing about that, particularly for those working in England and their experiences, because we do think there is a situation where allegations, when reported, aren't necessarily being conducted as they should be. If we look then to the different devolved administrations, then in Wales, just to advise, there was a summit held back in May 2024 that involved all stakeholders, including trade unions like the NASUWT, and that involved looking at the next steps for the national booking platform. If you have any experience or working in Wales at the moment, obviously they have got agencies there. They have still got some local authority pooled supply models, but they are also looking at engaging with a national supply booking platform. And obviously they're encouraging, and I think we wrote to members in Wales, encouraging members to look at signing up to that. So obviously we're looking at where the next steps for that are. And obviously following that summit, option papers have gone to the Cabinet Secretary. And obviously we now need to look at what the Cabinet Secretary is going to be doing and the feedback from that. And also in Wales, the TUC Cymru reported on Operation, I hope I get it right, Dysgu. I may not get that right. Apologies for any Welsh colleagues. terrible pronunciation there, which was an operation undertaken by the Employment Agency's Standards Inspectorate, looking at agencies in Wales and their level of compliance. And the data suggested, as far as the EAS were concerned, that the level of compliance had significantly improved. So agencies were no longer deviating or acting in an unscrupulous manner. They were less likely to be doing that and more likely to be operating as they should be according to the relevant legislation. In Northern Ireland, for colleagues who may be here today for Northern Ireland, the union has been pushing employers for a compliance report, particularly on how schools are using NISTRA or the Northern Ireland Supply Teacher Register. Essentially, it's about looking to make sure it's not being misused, in the sense of, is it being misused to advertise full-time jobs, etc., when it shouldn't be, etc. So the union is also, which goes back to the previous point I made, looking at the issue of teaching posts being advertised on the Northern Ireland Substitute Jobs Facebook page, which I assume as a Facebook page is cropped up and does not align with the NISTRA model. So why are they on there as opposed to NISTRA? So we are very proactive there in Northern Ireland, and I'm sure colleagues will report back in due course on that. And then lastly, in Scotland, the union did draft a motion looking at improving supply teacher conditions to the SNCT, or the Scottish Negotiating Committee for Teachers, which, and it is a very important, which it was withdrawn because of a technicality. It did, as a motion, garner widespread support from the other teaching unions. And so this has been taken back for further discussions with the Cabinet Secretary for Education and Skills in Scotland, as well as access to work in the absence of a national supply register. So that was discussed, as well as this issue of a national register for supply. So that gives you a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the work that the union has been doing. I will say that I've stopped sharing my screen. So it is over to colleagues if they have questions or queries that they would like to make.
Right, thanks for that. I have answered one question back to the person that mentioned it, but that was a new supply teacher who wanted to know about pensions. Obviously, for anybody new supply teachers, your agency should sign you up to a pension scheme, usually Nest, but there are others out there. I was put into Nest when I was a supply teacher. Your teacher pension scheme, if you have been paying into that, will be just frozen. That'll just be left for you to look at in future years for when you go, if you go back into teaching, you can then start back and add into it. There is a question for you, Paul. What's an umbrella company? What's an agency umbrella company? What impact might working for an agency that is under an umbrella company have on my working conditions, pay, etc.?
Okay, right. And just by the way, to echo what you said, Wayne, about pensions, and I know a number of supply teacher members say, well, I'd just rather have the money in my pocket. I think it is important to understand that you might want to take some financial advice, because obviously if you are putting in however little into your pension pot, and I know we've got a workshop on pensions later, but whatever you're putting in, you must appreciate and remember that your employer has to put in as well. So yes, you could take the money and say, I'd rather have it. It's a derisory pension pot compared to the TPS. I totally get that. But obviously, if you are paying in, your employer has to pay in. So there is some element of you getting the employer contribution as well. But obviously, those things are decisions that individuals will need to make based on some financial advice they receive. So coming back to the question, Wayne, a very good question from colleague Tom about umbrella companies. Essentially, and I'm doing a presentation on those who are new to supply teaching this afternoon. I've put it at the end, recognise that some people may not necessarily want that and may be an old hand at supply, so they can maybe duck out a bit earlier as they see fit. And we will cover this a little bit, Tom, in that. But essentially, what an umbrella company is, it's like a fourth part of the wheel. So if you think about the different relationships in supply teaching, there's you, the supply teacher, there's the school, which we sometimes refer to as the hirer or the end user, or sometimes they're called the client. So there's you, there's the school. If you're working through an agency, there's obviously the agency. The agency takes you and registers you as a supply teacher. They then go to the school, and the school asks them when they need a supply teacher. The agency secures your services and books you. So there's the agency. Now, there is also an umbrella company, and an umbrella company often is another part of that equation. It's essentially, when it boils down to it, some agencies aren't very big. So they don't want to manage their own payroll. They don't want to pay somebody to do payroll for them. So they farm it out to an umbrella company. So the umbrella company essentially then might be your employer. And they might not be, because the agency might just do payroll through them, but you might be employed through the umbrella company. So there's another part of the equation. So the umbrella company, if they're your employer, they will take the information from the agency, they'll take the booking, they will then engage with the processing of the payment, they will make sure all the deductions are made, and then they would pass the money that's left onto you as the supply teacher. So in a very simplistic way, one of the rationales for umbrella companies is because it means agencies don't have to manage certain things themselves, so they can actually farm that out to an umbrella company, and that absolves some of those responsibilities. Interestingly, though, if you are working for an umbrella company, you can sometimes be classed as an employee, not a worker. So you can theoretically gain access to more employment rights. Although I think the argument would be that they are often theoretical rights rather than real rights, because often you need a period of time to gain those rights. And sometimes you just don't gain them because you're never in a period of continuous service, because you're doing intermittent work here and there. So hopefully, Tom, that's answered the question. There is more information. It is a murky world, Tom. Very true, very true. It's a murky world, as we sought to expose and publicise and make it clear about the murkiness of this world. I think the TUC's position is they'd like to ban umbrella companies. We certainly have maintained they should be licensed, and there should be very strict guidance on how they're licensed. There is interesting, Tom, as well. There was a consultation last year, very, very detailed consultation. It was either last year or the year before, about how umbrella companies work. And we submitted a response, which you can find on the website, by the way. If you go onto the NASUWT website, type in consultations, all the consultation responses are there. Look for one about, and if you go Control and F, when you've got that consultation screen up on your computer, Control and F, you can then search that screen. So you can search that website screen. So you could type in tax or umbrella companies, and it will go to where umbrella companies are mentioned, hopefully, and show you. So we did submit a very detailed response, and we're waiting to see what comes out of that. I mean, unfortunately, the previous government had a number of responses around umbrella companies and kicked the can down the road repeatedly. So we don't know where we are with that. I don't think the response has been published in terms of what the government thinks it's going to do. But hopefully that may address the murky world of umbrella companies operating and existing, because it does pose a problem. It does complicate things somewhat. I think I'd agree with you there, Tom. So we'll wait and see. But the union has been quite vocal and quite detailed in this. We do also, if you look at the section on supply teachers, we do have a document which goes through what an umbrella company is in a bit more detail, Tom. So do feel free to go away, have a look at that, and we can hopefully that will help give you the advice you need. I think I've answered that question, Wayne. I know another number have popped up, so I don't know what order they are in, Chair.
Well, we'll go in order. Well, I think you've half answered some of the other ones as well, so you might need to just add on to a little bit. The next one's from Sonia Carvel. Are the government still going to ban 0 hours contract, and what impact will that have on supply teachers?
It's a really good question, Sonia. We obviously know that that was part of their manifesto. They used the word ban exploitative 0 hours contracts. I think we need to look at, we are engaged with the TUC on this. We are engaged with government. Government have held a number of roundtables where they get people from business, trade unions and other stakeholders involved to discuss this. This is a live issue. It's a really good question you've raised. It's a live issue, and the union needs to very carefully consider what comes out of this, because there is sometimes a danger of looking to grab headlines with banning exploitative contracts, maybe not appreciating how that might work for all of those different groups working, including supply teachers and education, because obviously our survey results suggest that quite a number of supply teacher members enjoy doing supply teaching work, enjoy the varied nature of it. So would they necessarily want to be tied down to a contract with one school for, say, 1 or 2 days or 3 days a week, which is what might be the case, asserting the right to a fixed number of days or fixed number of hours, which is also part of what might come out of this. And I think when this was constructed and when this was decided by government to be something they take forward in their manifesto, quite rightly, they were looking at maybe the one-sided flexibility where you work for Sainsbury's, as an example. I'm not saying Sainsbury's do this, by the way, it's just hypothetical. You permanently are an employee of Sainsbury's, but you've got no guarantee of what the hours are. So you are an employee, but one day they bring you up, say you need to work 4 till 10. Then you don't get any work for 3 days. Then they bring you up and say you need to work 8 till 4. Okay, so that's what the government is maybe talking about. You are a permanent employee, you have got a contract, but you've got no guarantee what the hours would be. So that's the sort of exploitation they might be looking at. So then there is a genuine question, I think. How does that then work for agency workers? Because agency workers are doing work that's slightly different to that. And also there is, and again, you can start to think of the unintended consequences of this, that there is the fact that, your relationship with a school, you're not working for a school, you're working often through an agency going to a school. So who do you assert your right with, the agency or the school? Well, if you assert it with the agency cannot guarantee the school to give you work. So there are a lot of things that need to be teased out in this, but we are certainly working with the government and other stakeholders, TUC included, to look at how we can make sure this works. So it's a really good question. I'm sure this will be a question we'll return to in the next time we meet.
Thanks for that, Paul. Yeah, I know it's something that the General Secretary is talking to as well about the government, about where that will affect supply teachers. Next one from Joanne Thomas. It's one that you've half answered already. What if my agency has put me in a pension? They issue pay slips to deduct tax. They state I'm not an employee. They say they employ my services, not me. I get no holiday pay, etc. As far as I'm aware of, they are not an umbrella company.
Well, I mean, do come back to me, Joanne, with a contract for your employment. You will have a contract with the agency. The agency has a contract with you. It'll either be a contract for services or a contract of services. And when they engage you, they are expected to do one of two things: either pay you an additional amount for holiday pay, which is sometimes commonly referred to as rolled up holiday pay, or they have to deduct it. They cannot pay you no holiday pay. That is incorrect. So that's an interesting one, Joanne. I don't think they're right if you're not getting holiday pay. You are a worker in terms of the law and the way employment law works. You are a worker, but you are employed through the agency and by the agency when you are working for them. So they are technically correct to say you're not an employee, but they still have to issue you with a pay slip and deduct taxes, etc., because you are a worker, and they are obliged to do this because they have to meet their obligations as the agency to show that they're deducting your tax, which the law says they must do, etc., and their own tax. So, this is a treasury taxation issue. So they must do that when they issue you the pay slip. But you're right, they are right, and we're right to say you're not an employee, you're a worker. So you get access to some benefits, not all. But in terms of benefits, all people, workers included, have the right to holiday pay. So they should be deducting that.
Right, she has just put at the bottom now. I haven't re-signed my contract. I'll send my contract if I can. So if I can say if you can contact Paul directly. What I will say is when you say you might not get any holiday pay, when on my pay slip it did have it separate. I got so much per day, £140 a day when I was doing it a few years back, and 120 something of that it said pay so much holiday pay, which obviously was paid to me at the same time. But if it doesn't say that on your pay slip, then that's what we need to look at. And Paul's just put his email in the chat box for you to have a look at.
And just to come back on this, and I'll talk about this afternoon for those who are new to supply teaching, but from April the 6th, 2020, the law said that all agencies, even if they were using an umbrella company, by law, they have to provide you what's called a KID or a key information document. That key information document must detail what's called a reasonably realistic example of your payslip, and that must include all the statutory deductions. Holiday pay is a statutory deduction which they must deduct or pay you in addition. They can pay you, and so it doesn't seem like, Joanne, your agency is operating in accordance with that. So do come back to me, because we can feed this to colleagues in the relevant government department, and they will act on this confidentially as appropriate. The other thing on holiday pay is read your contract carefully, because sometimes it will maybe say you've agreed to a daily rate of £175 a day, inclusive of holiday pay. So that will be part of the 175, or exclusive. So read it, because if it excludes that, and then you find it's deducted from the £175, then you can go back to them and say, well, that's not what the contract says. You need to give me an uplift to factor in the holiday pay, which would be calculated at 12.07%.
Thank you, Paul. Sally Russell says, it's not a question, just advice from an old hand. Do not sign to an umbrella company. Insist on being paid via PAYE. Umbrella companies take a fee. Now, I know that if you're working for a supply agency and they pass you on your pay thing to another, you can insist. It's whether the supply agency have the facilities to do that. I don't know if you want to come back.
The other point to just make there, Wayne, is the agency is under no obligation to find you work. So you could insist, and you could say, I want to be paid PAYE. The agency could say, perfectly reasonable. We don't have to find you any work. So just be careful. But again, this KID, if an agency says you can be paid PAYE through us, or we have an umbrella company, or a number of umbrella companies we use, they have to give you a separate KID for each arrangement they offer you. So if it's agency and 2 umbrella companies, you should get 3 KIDs, and each one should detail how you're going to be paid and what that would look like.
Thank you. This next question is from Andrew Tessier. I've done supply for 3 years since qualifying. I know that I will have to essentially give up teaching if I do not get a permanent post and start my ECT in the next 2 years. Has the union raised this issue of the 5-year limit and the hundreds of people who have to leave the profession because of this? Thank you.
Andrew, yes, we have raised it. Very simple answer to this. We are aware of the 5-year limit. As a union, we have raised this. I would say, Andrew, that in my experience, I haven't noticed there have been hundreds of people that have come to us about this. I would say it's a trickle of people who've come to the union. I may be wrong, by the way, Andrew. So That's no slight at all on what you're saying in your comment, because we may not have that intelligence. It would be useful to understand how many people are doing supply, ECTs. I think you're right, Andrew. It has increased over time, but we have raised this limit with the government, and we will certainly continue to do so.
Thank you for that. I hope that was enough there, Andrew. Last question on the Q&A, and then I'll have a quick look in the chat. From Hilda Lang. I hope I said that right. I had a fantastic number of years working for an LEA supply service, which paid to scale and paid into the teacher's pension. Unfortunately, it closed down this year. How likely would this type of supply register return? Would the government encourage any other LEA supply services to reopen? Good question. It's
a really good question. I mean, Hilda, it's a real shame, because that's a great example of how it should work. So that's a really good example of how it should work. I engage and deal with about 30 national employers, so multi-academy trusts, and quite a few of them constantly say we spend a lot of money on supply. And I do say to them, well, why don't you just all work together in your local authority or local areas and get together and manage a supply pool? And I think the pennies started to drop now that they're paying an awful lot. And some of them are now looking at, say, banks of supply, where they would employ them across their schools. And obviously that would be on a sort of 0 hours contract. But when you go to those schools that you're contracted to go to, you get paid to scale and you get TPS. I do think, Hilda, a lot of people have recognised too late what they've lost now in terms of local authority pooled supply, the arrangements, everything being done for them. I think in terms of the TUC procurement and outsourcing model, we've been very clear that when you talk about bringing stuff back in-house, like local authorities no longer outsourcing cleaning in their buildings and stuff, we have said that we think that that should include looking at supply models, so managing supply through local authorities. And this is something, Hilda, if you've got a local association you're active in, get them to put it on the agenda for a school funding forum. Get them to put it on a local JNC. I used to represent the union on JNCs locally in West Berkshire. Get it on the agenda so you take it to one of those council meetings and start saying, because when you talk about how this could work, it only takes for one school to manage it and to employ somebody that manages it and everybody to chip in. And then basically you can do the same as a local authority pooled supply arrangement would work. So we are advocating those. We continue to advocate for them, Hilda. We continue to make the case. And hopefully now there's been a change of government, the mood music around this may be changing based on the TUC outsourcing and procurement. So we'll see where we go with this, but we are certainly pushing at a more open door.
Thank you, Paul. Andrew has come back with another question based on something you said, but I can answer some of it. Is said, as far as I'm aware, no one captures stats for people leaving teaching unless they have a permanent post to begin with. Does anyone have those numbers? Now, Andrew, as a union, if they're leaving teaching and then they leave us, we do ring everybody to find out why they're leaving us as a union. So if we do have some of them figures, hopefully we may be able to get that information. And the other bit you've just mentioned, slightly joking, based on what you have said so far, but where can I get £175 a day or even 140 as I mentioned? It's hard. I was £140 for 5 years. No pay rises, no nothing. But I do know there are some supply teachers that negotiate a term for themselves. There is a shortage of teachers, so in theory you could argue that supply teachers should be in more demand. So if you're in demand a lot and a lot of schools are wanting you, there's an option there that you could negotiate when you sign your next contract a better rate of pay. But it is something we are looking at as a union with the government about getting a standardised national rate for supply teachers based on their experience. That's what I've asked the General Secretary asked for. How we go with that is a different matter. Do you want to come back in on that, Paul?
Well, I mean, it is. Yeah, I mean, okay, I appreciate we've both quoted figures that maybe Andrew, unfortunately, you're not able to realise, but there are a range of variables there in terms of where you work, what subject you teach. We know that some subjects attract a premium, some don't, or are less likely to. It depends on the agency. It depends on how desperate the school is. And I think that's why Wayne is quite clearly articulated that we're looking for maybe, in an ideal world, we would not have the agencies operating. We'd have local authority pool supply. If they are operating, though, what we might be able to do is basically they operate under a national framework and the pay is set at a national scale. Everybody's paid according to this, and that's the rate. And there's no variation whether you work in agency X in one place or agency B in another place. Interestingly, though, the data from the last survey did say, because of the shortages Wayne described just now, some supply teacher members were more likely to get more money, and some were reporting getting more than £200 plus a day. That's just the data. So those people who answered the questionnaire last year, it was an increase. Now, I'm not saying that's uniform across the whole piece, but there certainly were some people who were more able to argue the case for an increase in pay.
Thanks for that, Paul. One last comment on Felicity. Not listen to question because we're going to move on to the next little bit. Felicity Spence said that I negotiated by saying I was a UPS teacher and I've X amount of years teaching. They upped the daily rate. So it's just a matter of negotiation with your supply agency. But as Paul said, we need to actually look at a national pay scale.